Good morning. I'm Claire Monroe, and I'll be doing my speech on helicopter parenting. What is the first thing you think of when you see Lori Loughlin? Maybe you think of her time as Aunt Becky on Full House or Fuller House. Or maybe, as is much more common today, you think of headlines all around the world screaming, Lori Loughlin, college admission scandal. That right there, that is helicopter parenting. A mother who wanted more for her child than what her child could obtain herself. So she bypassed the system, cheating both her daughter and every other student at the University of Southern California. Good morning, I'm Claire Monroe, and today I'll be talking about today's trend of parenting on autopilot, how helicopter parenting is spinning out of control. Before we dive in, I want to make note of a few things. I, of course, am not a parent, so I do not yet fully understand things from a parent's perspective. However, I do have two parents, lots of friends, co-workers, and other acquaintances with parents, and loads of stories about their parents. So I am not in the dark on this subject. And of course, no parent is, has ever been, or will ever be perfect, and that's okay. This speech is not in any way an attack on parents or the methods in which they choose to raise their children, but it is a warning, backed by the Bible, a long list of experts in family study, psychology, and a few of my own personal observations. To visualize this, take a look at this image. In an effort to give their child a kickstart, the parents fly their child over the obstacles that all the other children are battling. However, when that child lands on the other side, they won't have the skills, confidence, or practical experience like all of the other kids. So they may have gotten to the other side a little quicker and with a few less bruises, but at what cost? Due to the overwhelming amount of pressure and competition to become the best, parents begin to intervene on their child's behalf, intending to secure a successful future, while instead loading themselves up with unnecessary expectations, unnecessary stress, and unrealistic expectations for their child. To fully explain what helicopter parenting is and why it is important, I'll first cover some common characteristics for helicopter parenting. Then, I'll explain the mentality of these parents. Next, I'll give some common arguments for helicopter parenting, then explain the Bible's response. And finally, I'll explain what effects this parenting style really has on both the parent and the child. And throughout this process, I'll give examples of the most extreme helicopter parenting habits to the very subtle stumbling blocks that often go unnoticed. Now, to eliminate any confusion regarding what helicopter parenting actually is, Merriam-Webster Dictionary defines helicopter parents as a parent who is overly involved in the life of his or her child. Dr. Tom Cotter, a former priest and psychologist, expands on that definition, categorizing helicopter parents as overprotective parents who are over-involved and don't allow kids to make mistakes or profit from their errors. This style of parenting places an unbearable amount of pressure on the child to succeed, and when they fail, it forces their parents to shoulder all of the blame because they were the only driving force. Now, let's look at the cause of helicopter parenting. The drive for it stems from parents, often unintentionally, looking to society on what to prioritize as they are aiming to raise profitable and successful children. For example, society places way too much pressure on kids and their parents to do everything and to be the best at it. Helicopter parents constantly hold up the world standards as a measure of success for their children, intending to raise profitable children. To define profitability, Gail Saltz, author at the Child Mind Institute, comments that we are a society that tends to subscribe to the idea that if something is good, more of it must be better. And that's where the idea of helicopter parenting comes in, because in fact, more isn't always better. Using societal standards to determine parenting habits is a critical downfall for helicopter parents. They mindlessly take on that more is better mentality and load their child's life with extracurriculars, honor clubs, advanced academic courses, and any and every other resume booster they can find. For example, if a helicopter parent has an athletic child, they might push their child to excel in baseball, basketball, soccer, football, and more. And while society's more is better mentality supports this type of overloading, it actually robs their child of the opportunity to develop passion and excellence in their favorite sport. Feeding into the more is better mentality, parents not only load their child's schedule, but take on most of the pressure to maintain that themselves, effectively robbing their children of the opportunity to learn to schedule, time manage, and it adds an unnecessary amount of stress to the parent's life. Megan Francis, a journalist at NBC News, reports that the vague mandate to be involved can lead to stress and guilt for time and resource-strapped parents, and resentment in those of us who'd rather our relationships with our kid revolve around something other than worksheets and study guides. Not only does this parenting technique not allow for the development of dedication to one extracurricular or field of study, but it also ignites a horribly toxic relationship between the parent and their child. So now, as the parent loads and hovers over their child's schedule, their child feels an enormous amount of pressure and shame when they can't even keep their own soccer schedule in order. Moreover, parents taking on their child's academic, extracurricular, or even social burdens eliminates any possibility of their child finding success without help from their parents. When parents take control of their child's schedule, they allow their child to take credit for things that they aren't accomplishing themselves, which actually sets children up for failure later on in life when they want to be successful but have no practical experience in getting there. Especially in today's world, parents want to see their children succeed. It's a deep-seated part of human nature. But in a time filled with hyperconnectivity, it can be easy for parents to become overly involved in the life of their children. As Chris Segrin and a team of researchers explained, there's a fine line between pushing a child to succeed and doing the work for them to give them the illusion of success. Whether parents mean to or not, when they bulldoze problems out of their child's way, they are creating a false reality of success for their child. Creating success for a child doesn't teach them anything. It actually does the opposite, because eventually that child will land their first grown-up job and come to the realization that mom and dad can't help them land that client or close a sale, and they have no idea how to do it on their own. Creating success for a child teaches them how to fail, because for their entire life, they've sat back and allowed their parents to generate success for them. So as they transition into the real world, the only thing they know how to do is sit back and allow someone else to do the hard work for them. Joseph Kapp, an esteemed reporter from the Huffington Post, comments that helicopter parenting, well-intentioned or not, effectively deprives children of the learning opportunities to experience failure, the resiliency of bouncing back, and the confidence that comes from overcoming failure. Children of helicopter parents may develop stunted problem-solving skills, if they have them at all. And why would they? Instead of learning how to solve their own issues, they sat back and allowed their parents to solve their problems for them. Ultimately, a child that is never pushed down may never learn to get back up. Parents truly believe clearing their child's path of any worry, stress, or heartache will earn them instant success, but it truly just clears their path of any real and independently earned success. In this bulldozing method, it also enslaves the parent, as they now always have to watch and be ready to jump at even the slightest sign of struggle, because otherwise, their children will surely fail at every turn. Another colossal parental downfall many parents employ is when they become so hyper-focused on any potential problem their child might face, they unintentionally multiply the anxiety their children experience over their problems. Instead of separating themselves from their children's issues, parents rush in to take any pain or suffering away from their child, ultimately sending the message that what their child is facing is far worse than it really is. Chloe Bennett, author of What is Helicopter Parenting and Why is it Bad?, reports that parents of anxious children may view challenges to their children as more threatening than the children perceive the same challenges themselves. If done frequently and over time, this can reduce children's natural ability to succeed using their own initiative. Not only does this spark excess panic for that child, but it tells them that they are not capable of handling hardships and challenges on their own. So how can parents avoid this toxic swooping in? They must recognize that although they are there to guide and help, they must never take on their children's issues. Dr. Tom Cotter encourages parents to ask themselves, who has the issue? Is it you or your kid? Do not take on your kids' issues as your own. Keep the kids' problems their problems. You are there to help, not to take on the issue. Keeping the kids' problems their problems teaches them self-responsibility, initiative, and how to recover gracefully from hardships without their parents needing to step in. An excellent example of a parent not knowing when to step back is on the ABC show Blackish. The mom in the show exasperates to her husband. Diana's in trouble. Our little girl has experienced her first heartbreak. She got dumped by her best friend. I'm gonna fix this. Instead of simply talking through the issue with her daughter and advising her on a healthy way to recover from heartbreak, her mom steps in an attempt to force the friendship back together. So now, when a child gets a poor grade, detention, misses a shift at work, or is in any kind of trouble at all, the parents can often take it personally, as the child is now a vehicle for their own parental success. Dr. Cotter warns that now, parents can't grow up either. They intertwine their child's issues with their own. So when their child gets punished at work or school or cannot get into the dream college, parents go into fight mode and defend their kid and really themselves, instead of simply working together with another authority figure to resolve the issue. This damaging habit of going up against authority figures is seen again in the show Blackish. In an attempt to fix her daughter's friendship, Rainbow, her mother, confronts her daughter's principal, who replies, "I understand your concern, but we can't expel a girl for simply not wanting to continue a friendship with Diane." To which her mother replies, "Fine, then let's do a day of healing about not stabbing your friends in the back. You don't get it. I won't let this happen to Diane." When parents get so concerned with their child's life being perfect, often as a self-confirmation of their own success as parents, it becomes them needing for their child to succeed. Not for the fruition of the child's future, but to affirm that they are good parents. Using their child as a measure of success, parents place an expectation on their child that they won't ever be able to satisfy. Moreover, as unquestionably value as having an impressive resume is, the real value comes from learning and the failures along the way to success. Intending to take care of the seemingly little details for their child, such as scheduling and laundry, helicopter parents actually rob their children of the opportunity to learn time management, multitasking, and planning ahead. Parenting expert and esteemed author Julie Lythcott-Hames says, "When parents have tended to do the stuff for their kids, the transporting, the waking up, the responsibility taking, the decision making, the question asking, the talking to stranger, the bill paying, the reminders about deadlines and obligations, their child will be in for quite a shock when their parents turn them loose in the world of work and college. And they won't be able to cope with failure very well, because they haven't had much practice at that either." As heartbreaking and disappointing as failure can be, it is absolutely essential. In reality, the most successful people in the world failed at something 100 times before they ever got it right, and a huge component of that is recovering gracefully, and that takes practice. Not only does helicopter parenting stunt adolescents' transition into the real world, but it stunts their motivation to succeed. Corey Steig, a researcher from CNBC, notes that helicopter parenting signals to the child that their parent will make all major life decisions for them, including monitoring their performance and maintaining their schedule. So as kids grow up, they feel like everything they do is for their parents, and they lose any personal motivation to succeed. In addition to not owning their own actions and decisions, kids no longer feel the work to strive for or make improvement because they know their parents are so terrified of them failing, they'll jump in a second to make up for any shortcomings. However, just because a child is helicopter parented does not mean that they do not believe that their parents love or have confidence in them. But it can often give the child the feeling that their parents' love for them is contingent upon their academic performance. No matter their age, almost all helicopter parented children feel that their parents' love for them is contingent upon their academic performance. Julie Lythcott-Hames recalls a conversation between Charlie Goffin, the retired chairman of the board of the Latin School of Chicago, a school serving about 1,100 students, who emailed the statistics off to a colleague and asked, "Do you think your child or your parent would rather have their child depressed at Yale or happy at the University of Arizona?" The colleague quickly replied, "My guess is 75% of parents would rather see their child depressed at Yale." Even teachers clearly sense the enormous amount of pressure on their students from their parents to achieve academic perfection, no matter the cost. As kids grow, they begin to associate love as part of that cost. Jessica Leahy, author of The Gift of Failure, asks students to close their eyes and raise their hands if they really and truly believe their parents love them more when they bring home high grades and less when they bring home low grades. In middle school, the number of kids who raise their hand is close to 80%. In high school, it's closer to 90%. Even in middle school, when grades matter far less than learning and developing both in and out of the classroom, kids still feel the looming ultimatum to have good grades or feel less loved by a parent. As undeniably important as good grades are, they really only matter for a small fraction of that child's life. So for them to start off living with the feeling that their parents' love is contingent upon their academic performance is a horrible feeling that will haunt that child's relationship with their parent for the rest of their life. Admittedly, children are indeed a gift from God, and it is their parents' job to raise them. However, all children ultimately belong to God. So when their parents prioritize their children and forget to invest in their relationships with God and their spouse, they begin creating a dangerous and unrealistic reality for their child. Greg Wilson, a Christian and the author of The Idolatry of Family, clarifies the difference in beliefs. It's the parent's job to raise the kid, with raising the kid should be the parent's prime priority. He comments that parents who nurture their children, but not their relationships with spouse or the Lord for 18 plus years, often get divorced when their children are grown because they have nothing else. Not only does this family dynamic completely contradict how Christian families ought to be, but the best way to teach your child about loving the Lord, having healthy relationships, and even life essentials like finances and balancing one's work and personal life is by example, not by telling them what they ought to do and having their parents do the exact opposite themselves. Although parents being aware of and guiding what their children are watching and doing is extremely important, it can also become a slippery slope into obsessing over their child's well-being. Jeremy Bell of the Culture Faith Intersect Project notes that our relationship with our kids is only temporary, but our relationship with the Lord is eternal. Thus, our relationship with our kids should never top our relationship to God or even our relationship to our spouse. Keeping a healthy hierarchy of all relationships, God, spouse, kids, and friends, is not only biblical, but gives kids an excellent example to model their own life off of. Many, instead of viewing children as temporary privileges given to parents by God, society encourages us to elevate them from temporary gifts to forever idols. Now, many think of idols as things like money, sex, work, and power, but very rarely does society show the potential for children to become idols. According to Tim Keller, an idol is anything more important to you than God, anything that absorbs your imagination more than God, anything you seek to give you what only God can give. When illuminated to the idea, most agree that the idolization of kids is unbiblical and simply unhealthy. Yet, a very simple but often unnoticed idyllic outlet many parents employ is being their child's friend. Treating your kid like your friends tips the familiar hierarchy and blatantly idolizes children. Jeremy Bell comments that the idol worship of children means that the children are the supreme relationship in the life of parents. This is typically observed as the best friend-parent model. In an effort to be a best friend or cool parent, parents prioritize their relationship with their children and forget to nurture their relationships with spouse or their God. Oftentimes, parents are not even aware of how they're idolizing their children. They are simply trying to keep an open relationship and trying to create an environment in which their child always feels comfortable talking to them. But treating your child as your friend often unnoticeably transforms the relationship from a guide and guardianship to an object of idol worship. Now, I challenge you parents. Remember, your children are really God's children. Your children need to fail. Your children need to struggle. It will be hard, both for them to find their way and for you to let them do it on their own. But it will be well worth it in the end, when you have the comfort of knowing that as adults, they know how to handle challenges without sacrificing their relationships or their physical and mental health. And then and only then can you watch their future bloom with the comfort of knowing that they can gracefully handle the challenges that come their way. And your relationship doesn't have to be your hovering, ready to jump in at even the slightest sign of struggle. And now I challenge you students. Remember, it's okay to fail. Don't let the fear of failure keep you from trying new things like trying to manage your schedule or take charge of your own budgeting and income. Your parents will always be there to help you. But don't let them do all the work. Please, own your own mistakes, own your own failures, and don't be afraid to own your own future. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. A few questions for you. Has social media played a part in influencing today's trend of helicopter parenting?
Absolutely. Social media pushes parents and children to be the best, and it creates competition and comparison among teens and their families. So social media creates a need for perfection, and helicopter parenting is the answer many have turned to.
Thank you. How should parents go about teaching or disciplining their children without helicopter parenting them? Does implementing curfews or rules also count as helicopter parenting?
That's a great question. Of course not. Parents should absolutely still discipline their kids, and they still need to watch over and do things like curfews and rules, and especially phone restrictions. But parents also need to allow their child to fail, and when their child gets in trouble outside of the home, in school or work, their parents must allow their child to take responsibility and own up to their own consequences.
And one last question. How does helicopter parenting affect the child's ability to eventually parent their own children? Are they more likely to become helicopter parents themselves or give their child more space?
That's a great question. I think we can see trends and repetition among generations. So either parents rebel or children rebel against their children, and they'll do something totally different than what their parents did. Or oftentimes we'll see parents and children kind of continue in those relationships and repeat their parenting trends. Thank you.
Thank you.